One of the things I want to start with, I do want to remind everybody, and I think we mentioned this at the beginning of last week's meeting, for those of you who do have your cameras activated, it's a good idea just to remember that you have your cameras activated, and then also if you have anybody else in the house, especially those of you who have an open room behind you, if you have anybody else in the house that may walk in behind you, you may want to make sure that they are aware that you have an active camera. As everybody gets into Zoom meetings, we're seeing more and more bloopers, I'll call them, where people are, either forgetting that they have a camera active and carrying the phone in the bathroom with them, or people who are, spouse walks in through the back of the room, and so there's a lot of funny things going on there. So just be aware of that. One other thing that I would encourage all of you to take a look at when you start using any product like this is just have a look at how you're centered. So find your picture on the screen. And what I see a lot of is either people will be have their camera adjusted like this, or what I see most frequently is this situation where you can just barely see somebody, not very centered. So I like to try and get my camera adjusted to where I fill most of the screen pretty comfortably. And in some cases, that's a matter of making adjustments to your laptop screen. Sometimes it's making adjustments to a camera that sits on top of your monitor. And that is one other thing that I'll mention. So there are a variety of different ways that folks can join a Zoom meeting. You can join through a laptop. You can join using a desktop as long as you have a camera, because cameras do not come on most monitors. But if you do have one, you can just set it right up there to record. Other than that, if you have a desktop but have not actually purchased a camera, it does not come with one. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, because I've had a couple of people ask me about that. The other drawback is right now, because of everything going on with coronavirus, it's everybody rushed out and bought cameras. So right now they're actually very hard to find. So for those of you who are using a camera, that's a good thing, and I'm glad you have one that you'll be able to use. Some folks may even have one tucked away in a drawer somewhere, and so those can be helpful to pull out and get installed. I do want to thank everybody also, those of you who either sent me an email last week with some feedback. I really appreciate that. A few of you asked questions as well, and that's one of the things I want to go over real quick. Is I want to start this week's meeting by going over some of the questions from last week. I also want to ask, I do encourage everybody, if you don't have it already, to get out a sheet of paper and pen so that you can take a few notes as we go, because I'm going to be going over a fair amount of information, and if you're not keeping track as we go, taking some notes here and there, then it'll be very easy to forget some of the things that you learn. So one of the things we went over last week was Google Chrome, using it as your browser. That's the one that I recommend. If you haven't seen that video yet, I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick. And once I do, all right, so once I've shared my screen, Google Chrome is just this beach ball icon, and I'm seeing now that you may not be able to see that. Bear with me 1 second. I have two laptops set up. The second laptop I just have set up so that I can see kind of what you're seeing. There we go. So if you move your mouse around any, you may get a little pop-up bar down at the bottom of the screen that could cover some stuff at the bottom. If you just leave your mouse alone for a moment, you should get back to where you can see everything. But down here at the bottom of the screen, this is, I call it the beach ball icon. That's the one that I recommend using for your default browser. One of the questions I did get was, how do you set it to be your default browser? So if you have downloaded it and installed it as per the instructions from last week's meeting, you can just click on your start button down here in the bottom left corner of the screen, and then just start typing in the word default. And you'll notice when I type in the word default that the main option that I get says default apps. Under default apps, there's a number of different settings that I can adjust. But if I scroll down to the very bottom of this screen, one of my options is web browser. So if your web browser is set to something other than Google Chrome, I will say Google Chrome's the one I recommend. And again, if you didn't see it last week, you could watch last week's video to kind of hear some of the reasons why I discussed that. Now, one other thing I'll let you know is we do have this site, callbrady.com/senior training. And so if you do pull up that page, you're going to be able to watch a full replay of the different videos. So if you miss one, if you miss next week's meeting, for example, after about 24 hours, I'll typically I'll have it uploaded to YouTube and embedded onto this page. You can also access this same page. I just set this up today where you can just go to seniortraining.org and it's going to redirect you. So again, seniortraining.org might be easier to remember, and it'll bring you to this exact same page where you can watch previous videos. One other thing, just so you know, if you do start one of these videos, I'm going to collapse the, let's see here. I will point out right now, for example, if my mouse over here on the right side of the screen is covered up by the list of some of the other webcams, you can click on the little bar up in the top left corner of the webcams and it'll minimize that so you can actually see my whole screen. But if you start playing one of these videos, then down in the bottom right corner of the screen, you will see this little square. You'll see the four corners of a square, and that's going to allow you to make that full screen. So when you watch this, you don't have to just watch it in this little embedded window, and I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so we know now how to make Chrome your default browser. I also did receive a request to make my resolution larger, so my screen's more visible. So I appreciate that suggestion, and I hope it's maybe a little bit easier to see. I also received a question about about the top row of your keyboard, and what do all those keys mean? That's actually a fairly difficult question to answer, because for everybody, those keys on that top row of your keyboard could be a little bit different. For example, for some keyboards, it's just going to say F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, and so on. Those keys can have different meanings in different programs. If you have a laptop, I want you to pay attention to what the icons look like that are with the F1, F2, F3, F4. And it's going to be different for everybody. So for example, with my keyboard, my F5 key has a little picture of a sun and a minus. So what that means is adjust my brightness to make it dimmer. The sun with a plus is adjust my brightness to make it brighter, easier to see. Volume with there's a speaker with a minus, which turns the volume down, a speaker with a plus to turn the volume up, and a speaker with a slash through it that would actually mute the sound. So the different icons can mean different things on different laptops. So again, that's hard for me to answer too specifically, but also be aware that with some keyboards, there is a function key in the bottom left corner of the screen. So depending on how your keyboard is set up, it may be that if you just press the F5 key, it's going to dim the screen, but on other keyboards, you may have to do function and F5 in order to actually have the same impact. So, or an easier one to test might be the volume button. So if I just press my F3 key, it's not going to turn the volume up. I would have to hold down the function and the F3 to be able to activate that speaker and be able to see everything that's going on, to be able to make that actually happen. So the one other question that I got, actually two other questions I got. One, should I accept Dell updates? We talked a little bit last week about Windows updates and how Windows is going to be coming out with annual or potentially biannual updates to Windows 10. We talked about that you might currently have the 1909 version of Windows 10 or the 1903, or potentially one of the older versions from 2018. So we talked about the importance of keeping up to date with Windows updates. With Dell and Lenovo and HP and all the different computer manufacturers, there are updates that come with those as well. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here into the group chat, and I will just tell you that if you have a Dell, you could take a look at support.dell.com. And if you have an HP, it's support.hp.com. Or if you have a Lenovo, it's support.lenovo.com. Now, not every site has that same kind of layout, support.nameofthecompany.com, but a lot of them do. That's become more and more an industry standard. So if you are curious to see if you have all the updates, that would be a good place to start. Usually once you get to a site like that, there will either be an option. Dell, for example, has an option that says detect my system. And so it will actually figure out what type of system you have and then check to see what versions your drivers are, and then recommend potential updates for those drivers. The drivers and BIOS, those are things that all help keep your system running a little bit better. Let's say that when you first bought your Dell laptop, it came with a driver that runs your network card, okay? But that was 3 years ago. Since then, Windows has come out with tons and tons of updates. Some of those updates may have made those Dell drivers for your network card not work as well. So it may be slowing down your internet a little bit. It might be slowing down, might be causing occasional outages. But by keeping those drivers up to date, it can help keep your computer running more smoothly, especially after some of those major Windows updates, the 1903 and the 1909 update that we talked about. Once that type of major update comes out, it may be worth your while to flip over to the support website for your desktop or laptop and see if there is a new update available for those. If you do run into any questions along the way, please do know that I'm attempting to work from home as much as I can right now, or from my office, so that I can do remote sessions and not be too close to too many folks. I want to help keep my clients safe. I also want to keep my family safe. But we are still available for remote sessions. That's one of the great things we can do. Training sessions one-on-one or with families or with businesses through a platform like this, through Zoom, or we can actually do something else called Zoho. Zoho allows me to remotely control your computer, so we can do troubleshooting to figure out what may be going on with your computer in the event you're having any type of issues, or potentially help you run updates on your own system. The last question I got was about a specific security appliance for a computer network, and I will just say it was not a product that I was familiar with, so I'm not even going to mention the name of that in this particular meeting because I can't speak positively, negatively. I can't speak intelligently about it. Just don't know enough about it to be able to make a recommendation on that particular product. So today, well, let me let you know one other thing, and then we're going to get into kind of the meat of today's meeting, and that is, so next week, Monday is Easter Monday, so I'm not going to do a meeting on Monday, but I do want to kind of keep the flow of these meetings going, so I hope you'll join me on Tuesday of next week. We'll do same time, 4 p.m., for anybody who might be able to join us. Tuesday at 4 p.m., we'll do a meeting. Next week, I feel like is going to be one of our most important sessions that we cover because we are going to be covering security. Security, how to spot the things that are trying to scam you, how to spot the things that are legitimate, how to spot the things that are not legitimate. It is so frustrating and sad for me when I talk to some of my clients who have been scammed. I see that a lot, and it's very, very difficult. And a lot of the time, it's just if you kind of keep a few little tips in mind, you can avoid so much of the risks that are out there and so many of the scams where people are trying to get into your pocketbook. I'm afraid people are becoming more and more desperate right now. All around the world. So I think before scams get better, I think they're going to get worse. I do hear some rumblings of potential changes to the federal communications and things like that, where they might be able to help block some of those calls that can be used by scammers. But that's not happening a lot at this point. So I'm hoping that in the near future, we're going to start to see some changes in that. But I hope you will join me next week. If you're not able to join me Tuesday at 4, just check back to seniortraining.org sometime after that, maybe after Wednesday, and we should have that video online for you to watch and to share. I want to go over in this meeting some of the things that I get asked about a lot. One of the things that I want to talk about is antivirus. Just about every system that I sit down to, well, not every system, I would say at least 75% of systems are going to have the antivirus that was pre-installed on the computer when they got it from the manufacturer. In a lot of cases, that software is McAfee or McAfee. I say it both ways. So if you hear me talk about McAfee and McAfee, I'm talking about the same product. But if you buy a brand new Dell or a brand new Lenovo right now, it's going to come pre-installed with a 30-day trial of McAfee, or maybe even a full year trial of McAfee. In my opinion, McAfee is no longer that great of an antivirus program. And odds are, if your trial has already run up on that product, in other words, your 30 days or your 1 year are out, McAfee may still be installed on your computer, but it may no longer be updating to protect you. So if that's the case, the good thing to do is to uninstall McAfee and then replace it with Windows Defender. Windows Defender is actually a antivirus program that's built into Windows 10 systems. So if you are running Windows 10 on your laptop or on your desktop and you don't have any other antivirus, then Windows Defender is going to kick on. It's going to run updates. It's going to do everything in the background so that it keeps you protected. Windows 10, that's one of the things that I absolutely love. They will not let you go without antivirus. So if you uninstall a product like McAfee, Windows Defender is almost immediately going to kick on. So how would you uninstall that? Well, again, I'm going to share my screen here. And if I right-click on my Start button, again, the Start button is just this little Windows logo down here in the bottom left corner of the screen. If I click with my right mouse button, then I'm going to see a list of options show up. Now, a lot of these are things that are not going to be important to most people, but this option that's at the very top, that is something that's important. It's called Apps and Features. This is a list of all the programs that you have installed on your system. And so if you had McAfee on your computer, you would be able to scroll down through this list. Let me minimize something on my screen here. I'd be able to scroll down through this list and find McAfee and click on it. And when I click on it, it would give me an option to uninstall it. There's other things that are going to be pre-installed on your system. Let's say, for example, Candy Crush Friends. This is one thing that drives me absolutely crazy, because even with a Windows 10 professional system, brand new, being sold to businesses, it comes with Candy Crush Friends, which I have no objection to people playing games like Candy Crush, but I don't think they should come pre-installed, especially on business systems. But if you find any program in this list that you absolutely know you don't need, you can just click on it and then click uninstall. And after a short amount of time for a program like Candy Crush, maybe a little bit longer for a program like an antivirus program, then that program is going to be uninstalled. Same with Farm Heroes Saga, again, pre-installed on Windows 10 systems a lot of the time, so I can click on it and select uninstall. Now, here's the thing I do not want you to do. When you're looking through this list, some people look at different things and see, for example, HEVC video extensions from device manufacturer, but then it says Microsoft Corporation. Some people look at that and go, well, I don't know what that is, so I'm getting rid of it. Well, that's a mistake, because if you start just uninstalling things just because you don't recognize the name of it, then ultimately you're probably going to uninstall something that was important to the way your computer works. So do take a look. Some people will say to me, well, I have this pop-up that comes up on my screen every day, and it's coming from a program called Driver Update. Well, if you have a program called Driver Update, I can tell you right now it's a bad program, and I see it a lot, and I see it on a lot of computers. So if you see a program that you know has caused you problems, then it may be safe for you to go ahead and just uninstall it to get rid of it. But again, use some caution there. Don't just go blindly uninstalling things, because some of the things that are in there are going to be very, very important to the way your computer works, especially if it's from Microsoft or if it's from your computer manufacturer. In my case, I'm working from a Lenovo system, so I don't want to uninstall much of anything that came pre-installed by Lenovo. If you have a Dell, don't uninstall things that came pre-installed by Dell in most cases. There are other antivirus programs out there. WebRoot is one that I use with a number of my business clients. The thing I like about WebRoot for business clients is it allows me to see if one of my clients gets a virus. So in some cases, let's say one of the employees at a company gets a virus and they think, oh, well, I don't want anybody to know about this, so I'm going to try and get rid of this virus myself. Well, I actually get an alert in those cases so that we can address it, whether it's a training issue or whether it's a safety training, something that needs to be done to help resolve those issues. So I do like WebRoot in some cases. For years, I recommended Norton antivirus software. Norton is still good, but we're seeing more and more issues where Norton will really slow down a Windows 10 system. We're also seeing that that Norton is starting to really try and promote all of their other products that they offer. And so we're seeing more and more cases where people are just getting badgered by Norton. And so for a home system, Windows Defender is really excellent. They developed it a lot when they released Windows 10, and it's just been a fantastic antivirus. that added to the fact that Windows 10 systems, just by default, totally on their own, are about 10 times more secure than Windows 7 systems ever were. There's just so much more security built into them, so many more things that help protect you from all the bad stuff that's out there. So if you want to verify if Windows Defender is on your system, again, here, let me share my screen one more time. You can just, again, press your start button down there in the bottom left corner of the screen. And then if you start typing in Defender, and actually what I would advise you to actually look at here is this Windows Security. It's an app on your system, and it's going to tell you if you are up to date as far as your virus and threat protection. So here it's telling me no action is needed. You may get other prompts that ask you to sign in with a Microsoft account for additional benefits. We can talk about that in another meeting. There are some things that get tied in potentially with OneDrive that can help protect your system in the event you do run into some kind of a threat. I actually have WebRoot on this system, so that's that little W symbol. But you may also see down here in your taskbar, you may not see it in the icons that show up, but if you don't, you can click on this little caret, the little up arrow, and then you'll see the rest of the icons that are sitting there. If I click on the shield, it will show me, it'll take me back to this same screen so I can see if my system is currently protected. And again, virus and threat protection is what we're looking at here. Again, most of your systems should be protected. It's just a matter of whether it's being protected by Windows Defender, Norton, Kaspersky, McAfee, or one of the many other programs that are out there. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about laptops. I know a number of you are using laptops for this meeting. I have mentioned a couple of times that I've actually got another laptop that I'm sitting here with, and it kind of lets me see. I want to be able to look over to the side and make sure that y'all can actually see what I'm seeing during the meeting. But there's two big things that we see in our shop on laptops where people just make mistakes. And so I want to show you what those things are so you can help avoid those mistakes. First thing is related to the power cord. When I have my power cord plugged into this system, into the side right here, charging, and I'm sitting at a desk, that's great. What people have a tendency to do is they want to carry the computer into another room, and they'll unplug the computer from the wall, leave it plugged into the laptop, and then start walking into the next room. Well, as they're walking, it gets snagged on a piece of furniture, a spouse, a child, a pet, and this cord gets snagged. And when it gets snagged, it does not break this little piece that costs about $15, $20 for a new charger. It breaks the connector that's on the inside of the laptop. Well, right off the bat, that's about a $100 repair at minimum. And it's not a repair that we do in our shop. We would refer you out for that one. So if you are going to carry your laptop from one room to another, or even if you're just going to adjust things around on your desk for a bit, just unplug it, carry the laptop, carry the cord separately into the new location, and then plug everything back in. That's going to help protect that connector. We see it all the time where all of a sudden that connector is just totally loose. So as soon as you plug something in, it doesn't get a charge. So eventually your laptop's, the battery's going to die. And in some cases, we end up just needing to try and restore data from the hard drive if we can't get a repair done on the jack. The other big thing that we see a lot, two things come to how people treat the lid and the laptop itself. If I'm going to open and close this lid, what I see a lot of people do is just grab the laptop here on the corner and push it down. When you grab a laptop by the corner, it puts a lot of extra pressure on these two hinges where the laptop top connects to the base. And over time, what will happen is one of these hinges will just snap. At that point, you just have a floppy screen. The screen will frequently maintain its video connection, but it'll get to a point where you're going to have some books or something stacked up behind it in order to hold the laptop lid up. So what I encourage you to do is when you go to close the lid, do it either from the center to open and close, or use both hands. That's going to help give those hinges a lot better lifespan. Now, even if you're grabbing it by the corner, that's not something we see break right off the bat. It's usually on a 3 to 5 year old laptop that we'll see the hinges break. But we rarely see it when folks do take care of that screen. The other thing that I see a lot of is when people go to set a laptop down, they'll set it partway down and then just kind of drop it. They'll treat it like they're putting a book down on the counter. This is not a book. This is, for most of you, a fairly expensive piece of machinery. And it's for a lot of the, especially older laptops, it has a spinning hard drive that's very delicate inside the system. So if you drop it, especially while it's turned on, it can damage the hard drive, it can damage some of the other internal components of the system, and again, end up costing you a lot of money. So when you put it down like you're putting down a fine piece of glassware. Treat it very delicately, and it'll give you a lot more life. Let's see here. The next thing I want to talk about, I want to dig a little bit more into a few Windows shortcuts that can be very helpful in how you use your system. Now, a couple of these I'm going to tell you about, and I encourage you to write them down, but don't necessarily try them right away, because a couple of them will actually remove you from this meeting. A couple of them, I tell you what, I might use on my side laptop here so I can show you what exactly happens when you use these. But one that you can use right now would be to hold down your Windows key and press the letter M, like Mary. That's for minimize. Now, when you do Windows M, what that's going to do is minimize everything that's on your screen. Now, most of you can probably still hear me, even if you've minimized. So all you need to do is, I tell you what, the quickest way to get back into the screen is if you do an Alt-Tab, it'll pull me up, or you can just click on your little zoom icon down at the bottom of the screen again, and it'll pull this screen back up. But if you're ever out, on the internet, or maybe you have 5 or 6 different windows open, and you want to get down to your desktop so you can open another program, or so you can find a particular file, instead of sitting there and clicking minimize, 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 you can just do that Windows M. It's going to shrink everything down so you can see your desktop. Doesn't close anything, doesn't close any of the programs that you've got running. It's just going to minimize those programs. Another one that I'm going to encourage you to not use right now, because it may actually kick you out of this meeting, but you may want to jot this one down, is, again, the Windows key and the letter L. So I'm going to hold my laptop up here so you can see it. And again, when I press the Windows key and the letter L, what we're going to see happen is it's going to take me back to my login screen. Now, this is an old Windows 8 system, so it's going to look a little bit different than probably what you're seeing. But once I sit back down at this system and I press my space bar, it forces me to log in again. Now, if you have visitors in the house, if you have grandkids coming to visit and you don't want them getting onto your system, then when you get up and walk away from your computer, that's a great thing to do. Just the Windows key and the letter L. that's going to force them to have to type in a password before they can get back onto the system. Bear with me 1 second here. I will tell you the times that I see the most issues with people getting viruses, people getting, there's software causing problems on my system is right after grandkids come to visit. Because if you allow them to get on your computer, they're a little less fearful of downloading things with your computer than they are with their own. Or, and I see this an unfortunate amount. And so we'll find games that have been installed on systems, driver software that's been installed on systems, just all of this junk. So that Windows L can really protect you. Definitely recommend this too if any of you still work in any type of office environment. If I get up from my desk to walk away, especially if I'm in one of my clients that has a lot of employees walking around, when I do that Windows L, it ensures that my system is protected while I'm gone from my desk. Another great one that you can test out right now is Windows and the letter E, like Edward or Explorer. That's going to open up your Windows Explorer or My Computer. This is where you can see all of the files that are on your computer. So again, I'm just going to share my screen real quick so that you're able to see what I'm doing. So when I press Windows E, it's just going to bring up this screen where I can see documents, pictures, videos, downloads, music. These are all kind of frequent folders or shortcut folders. But I can also dig down. If I click on this PC over here, I've got an option to see everything that's on the entire C drive. I can see how much of my hard drive is full. I can see a lot of information. So again, Windows E, especially if you're in and out of files very much, that can be a very quick way to get to this screen. It does pull up the exact same thing as if you have this little folder icon at the bottom of your screen. You'll see I'm at the bottom kind of center area of the screen, the little yellow folder icon. Clicking on that also pulls up File Explorer. So I can either do Windows E or I can do File Explorer, the File Explorer icon, and it'll pull up the same thing. Excuse me. All right. Here's one other thing that I had a question about earlier this week. Somebody ran into an issue where they had opened up, let's say in this example, Google Chrome. And for whatever reason, they wanted to open up a second window of Google Chrome. They wanted to have two Google Chrome windows sitting side by side so that they could see both of them. And they came over here and they clicked Chrome, and what happens? It just minimizes it, makes it shrink down to the bottom of the screen. And so they tried to open it again, and then they clicked it again to open a second, and again, all it's doing is opening it up and minimizing it. If I, instead of clicking on it, if I right-click on the icon for Chrome, then I get this option where I can then click on the word Google Chrome again, and now I actually have two separate windows of Chrome. Same thing applies to, let's say that you have an icon on your down here on your taskbar for Word. So we talked about this last week, so as a quick review, if I know that I have Word on this computer, I can press Start on my in the bottom left corner of my screen. I can start typing in the word Word. I can then right-click on that icon and say Pin to Taskbar. And then once I have it pinned to taskbar, it shows up down here. So now it's just a single click to open that program. So if I open up Word, and maybe I open up a blank document and I start typing in here, then again, if I want to open up a second copy of Word, just right click on it and select the name of the program again, and it's going to open up a second screen. That way you can potentially work on two windows at the same time. Now, here's one other thing I just did that I want to mention to you real quick is let me close out of all these windows that I have open right now. I'm going to keep one copy of Word open, and I'm going to open up a Chrome window. Let's say that I want to work with both of these at the same time. I want to work with my Chrome window, but I also want to work with Word. Now, what we used to do is we used to sit here and fidget around, try and find the edge of each program and kind of spend a lot of time resizing things to get things just perfect. Windows 10 makes it so much easier. All I'm going to do is in any program that you have open, Chrome, for example, I'm going to click up here in this top bar. And once I click and drag, you'll notice well, let's see here. You're not actually seeing that. Okay. Okay, so it's not letting you see part of what I'm doing. But if you can look up here where I've got this top bar of Chrome, then once I click and start dragging that, as soon as my cursor hits over here on the right edge of the screen, what you're going to see happen is called a snap. So once I hit that right edge of the screen, it's going to snap so that Chrome fills exactly half the screen. And then I get to choose what other program is open on the other half. So let's say I have Word open. I can again click up here. Let me see if I can get where you can see it. I can click up here in the kind of just to the left of where it says sign in there. It's not actually where my arrow is showing up, but just in that blue area, I can start clicking and dragging around. And again, as soon as my cursor hits the edge of the screen, it's going to fill exactly halfway. And that's going to allow me to work on two different things at the same time. That can be very helpful, especially if you're dealing with a large screen and you're multitasking. Maybe you're wanting to type up an email based on some news article that you're reading or a recipe that you're looking at. It just gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to move those windows around. So again, with any window, just click on the space up at the top of the program, and then you'll be able to drag that window around, make it fill halfway. The last one that I want to show you this week, and then we're going to get into some question and answer, is, and this is one I definitely don't want you to press right now, is a key combination of Alt and F4. Now, we talked earlier about those keys at the top of your keyboard, and I'll know if one of you press it because I'll see you disappear from this meeting if you press Alt F4 right now. What that does is it kills whatever your active window is. So let's say you're out on the web and you're just browsing, and all of a sudden some program or some website just takes over your screen. If you've ever seen that before, some of those can be very scary. We'll talk about them next week, where, for example, it tells you you've got a virus on your system and you need to call some 800 number. Well, sneak preview of next week, don't ever call the 800 number, ever. Don't ever call the 800 number that pops up on your screen with a virus threat. But if you try and close that, sometimes that message can be very persistent. It can keep trying to pop up onto your screen. Well, what you can do, I'm going to share my screen one more time here. Bear with me one second. So right now, let's say that I have Calculator as my active window. It's the program that I'm actively working in. If I press Alt F4, it closes whatever the active window is. I can now click over here into Word, and I can do Alt F4, and it closes that program. Now, be aware in this case, we're not talking about minimize, we're talking about close. So if you are working in a Microsoft Word document and you do an Alt F4, then what that's going to do is it's going to prompt you, do you want to save this file? if it's something like calculator that doesn't have a save option, it's just going to close the program. So again, Alt F4 is something that's can be very helpful, especially when you're either shutting your computer down for the day, or if you're getting something new, something that you don't recognize popping up on your screen. It can be a very quick way to get that off of your screen by doing an Alt F4. All right. Again, once we get into question and answer, I know I want to make sure we have kind of a firm ending to when this will end, but I do want to remind you that next week we are not going to do the training on Monday because of Easter Monday. We're going to do it on Tuesday instead at 4 o'clock. Again, if you miss any meeting, feel free to go to seniortraining.org. That's going to redirect you to a page on my website that's dedicated to this project, so that you'll have the opportunity to watch past videos, including this one. The other thing is, if you do have any things that you'd like help with your computer, be aware that I am still scheduling remote sessions. I'm an early bird, so I see clients as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. I do try and wrap up my day at 5 o'clock, so usually we'll set the last remote session or person-to-person visit for 3 o'clock to give us, up to a couple of hours for that appointment. So if there's anything we can do to help you out, I'd love it if you'd either send us an email at brady@callbrady.com, or feel free to call our office number, which is 864-335-8672. You should see that in the chat window, along with the websites we talked about earlier for drivers for Dell, HP, and Lenovo. If any of you have any questions at this time, then you can chat down in the bottom right corner of your screen. Actually, if you don't have your chat window open yet, you may actually, if you kind of move your mouse on the screen, you'll see a chat bubble down at the bottom of the screen. Once you click on that, then over on the right-hand side, you have an option to either send a message to everyone will see it, or you can just select my name from the list and you can send me a message directly, and I'd be glad to answer while we've got everybody still connected here. While I'm waiting for a minute to see if anybody does type in a question for me, the last thing I would highly welcome and encourage and would greatly appreciate is if there's anything that you would like to have me cover more in depth in one of these trainings, or if you have any critiques, suggestions, whatever it may be, I'd appreciate it if you'd send me an email to that Brady@callbrady.com and just let me know what you think about these. Let me know if they're helpful. Let me know if I'm rambling or dragging on too much at any time. I take criticism well, constructive criticism well, so I would certainly appreciate any feedback you may have. The other thing is, I would incredibly appreciate any of you who could share this with your friends, family. For those of you that live in communities, if you have any type of a community board, you could always share it with them as well. I would love the opportunity to build this group. So I do have one question. Chrome was installed by someone else. How can I check if they installed the correct one? That's something that we did talk about last week. For those of you who are joining us for the first time this week, is when you install Chrome, if you don't currently have it on your system, the only place that you want to install it from is google.com/Chrome. If you don't, you could potentially get a version that's embedded with a bunch of extra junk software. The reason that I bring that up is I see a lot of folks who will maybe do a Google search or a Bing search. They'll search somewhere trying to find where to install Chrome from. And if you get the wrong one, it again can cause problems. So if you go back and watch the previous video, it talks a little bit more in depth about that. How can you tell if you got the correct one? It's actually very hard to tell. One thing you can do, let me share my screen here for a moment. When I go into Chrome, I have these 3 dots up in the top right corner of the screen. If I click on that, go to More Tools and Extensions. And this is something we're going to go over a little bit next week. If you have a ton of things in here, just about everybody in Chrome is going to have some things like Google Docs offline, Docs, Sheets, Slides. Those are all things that are installed by Google. Those are totally normal things. If you have a bunch of things in here and you don't know what most of them are, then there's a good chance that either some piece of software or possibly even the original version of Chrome that you installed may have installed a bunch of extra junk. This web root filtering extension just comes with the antivirus I have on this system. But if you're seeing things like maps extensions and what are some of the other ones I see, conversion toolbars, things like that, those are things that you're probably going to want to remove and may even need to reinstall Chrome or reset up your Chrome. Because some of the extensions that can get built into Google Chrome can really cause a lot of headaches for you. They can change the way the whole browser works. So if you are seeing some things in there that that you're not too familiar with, let me know and I'd be glad to set up a time that we could help you out with that. Another question we have is, let's see here. What can I do to enlarge the font on my email? I use Mozilla. Now, there's a couple of different possibilities here. One is Mozilla Thunderbird, which is an email client. The other is Mozilla Firefox, which is a web browser. If you are using any website, I tell you what, let me share my screen again. So if I'm out on the web, and let's say I'm even on my site, and something is on there that looks too small, too hard to see, if I use the Control key and the plus, Control plus, it's going to make everything on the screen larger, to the point where sometimes it can even be difficult to tell because you end up having to only having a few words on the screen at the same time. If I do Control minus, it makes everything smaller, and again, can make it so small that you can't even read it. So when you do a Control plus or Control minus, just don't forget that one cancels the other. So if you need to make something bigger, you can do Control plus. If you need to make something smaller, Control minus. If you're using Thunderbird or Outlook or any of these other email clients, email programs where you just open the program and there's all your emails, those can be very, very difficult to change your fonts on. I think I've looked into Thunderbird before as far as fonts, and I'm not sure that there is a way to change fonts just within that program. If I'm not mistaken, the easiest way to do it is to actually change the resolution of your screen. And when you change the resolution of your screen, it's going to change the size of everything. Again, if you do go to look at resolution, then making the numbers lower makes everything larger. So if I choose 1920 by 1280, everything's going to be very small on the screen. If I make it 800 by 600, everything's going to be huge on the screen. But that's also going to mean some websites, some of the content may actually be pushed off the edge of the screen. So it can cause some other issues. So you may need to play around with your resolution to find the right fit. Also, a larger monitor can be very helpful with that. And that's something I'm going to make a note of because I want to talk a little bit about monitors. Even if you're on a laptop, I want to talk a little bit about monitors and some of the things that you can do to resolve that. Question, how do you initiate or host a Zoom meeting? So the meeting I'm doing here, I have paid for Zoom so that I can do meetings with larger groups of people and I can do longer durations. If you do a Zoom meeting, you can do a meeting for free. Just go to zoom.us. Since I'm in the middle of a meeting right now, if I pulled up that site, it's going to look a little bit different. But if you pull up zoom.us, you can host a meeting with up to 100 people, but you're going to be limited to a 40-minute meeting. So if you're looking for anything larger than 40 minutes, then you'd need to pay for it, which is only about $15 a month, and you can do unlimited number of meetings. You can do meetings that are up to a day in duration, which to me, it's an incredibly affordable platform. Again, this meeting is only the third thing that I've used it for, and one of those was a meeting with my family, with my parents in Georgia. But it worked great for that, I felt like. And again, if you had family that's spread all over the country, you can use this. You can invite people. Basically, when you go to zoom.us and you say create a meeting, it'll give you a link. So the link might say zoom.us and then have a 9-digit number, and you send that to your friends or family, and then they would be able to join in, just again with the knowledge that you've got 40 minutes for your meeting unless you pay for it. The great thing too, though, is you can do as many meetings as you want. So if you've got another family member that doesn't mind you experimenting with them, you could host a meeting just with a couple of people. You could even host a meeting with somebody else in your own home, so that you can see what things look like. Again, when I'm doing these meetings, I have the laptop that I'm working from, but I also have another laptop sitting right next to me so I can see what everything looks like. So that can be very helpful if you are planning on hosting a meeting, especially with a large group of people. Let's see here. Looking through, we've just got a couple of minutes left. May have missed it, but how does Bitdefender stack up against Windows Defender? Also, Bitdefender seems to be blocking my camera. Any ideas? Bitdefender, once upon a time, was one that I liked okay. I haven't heard much about Bitdefender, good or bad, in years. So it's not one that I would strongly recommend. I would probably uninstall it and let Windows Defender take over the responsibility of antivirus. What is the Windows key? The Windows key is just that key down in the bottom left part of your screen, which is a little Windows flag. But that key also exists on about 90% of keyboards, 2 keys to the left of your space bar. You'll notice that exact same logo that you see in the bottom left corner of your screen. You'll see it on your keyboard. So when I press that, it brings up, well, I'm not sharing my screen right now, so I'll share it one more time. So if I come down here to the bottom left corner of my screen and I click this logo, then all of this information pops up, but I can also just press the same key on my keyboard and the exact same thing pops up. So if you watch last week's meeting, we talked a lot about different things you can do a very quick search for. So if I press Windows and then type in calc, it's going to launch my calculator. There's one other part to that question. And when killing a window, it is the small F4 key on the top, not the actual F4. So on the top row of your keyboard, you should see F1, F2, F3, F4. So it's just the Alt key at the bottom of your keyboard and F4 at the top. Now, if you are on a laptop, one of the things we talked about earlier is sometimes the icons that have a logo on it, for example, for speakers, those can take over some of the functionality. So you may actually have to do an Alt function F4 if just Alt F4 doesn't do what you're hoping it'll do. I tell you what, there's a couple of more messages that have come in. I will try and add those to our session for next week. I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you will send me an email. Let me know what you think. And if everybody can just give me one good wave, I'd appreciate it. It was great seeing y'all, and I'll see y'all next week. Thanks so much.